Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, CEO and founder of Church Boom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. So glad that you're joining us today. We are talking with Kellen. He is a pastor of a great church in Texas, and we're going to be talking about a couple different subjects today that we dove into, and one of those is knowing a good idea from the right idea. How do you know the difference so that you're making the right choices rather than just what sounds good, but it's the right choice? And also we're talking about how to stand out as a church. So many churches going on, all providing the services and whatnot, but how do you stand out as a church? How do you have that uniqueness about who you are? It's a great conversation. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it, so let's jump into it. Man, how can I serve you today? What's on your mind? And yeah, let's talk.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. I think anytime, leaders can sit down and can pick each other's brains and compare notes and learn from people who are gone ahead of you, it's invaluable. So thank you for that. For our context, It's a little unique just because of our location. First of all, it's very, very rural, which is not, I guess, unique to a lot of people. It's just sometimes the answers look a little bit different in their application.
Sure.
And for us in particular, a lot of the area we're in Texas. It's a Bible Belt, so it's very institutionalized, I guess would be the word I'd use. If church is a no-brainer, it's a thing that you do, but it becomes very chore based, very just something it's a ritual you do, and not necessarily something that to be freshened up or to rethink. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is introduce new ideas or new perspectives, and not to revolutionize everything or change what Jesus did, but to put it in a context that says, hey, it doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to look the same for it to be, Christ and to move us in a healthier direction. And so that kind of leads us into the questions, I guess, that I had put together. The first of which, I guess, was how do you differentiate as a leader between a good idea and the right idea? Because I feel like there's a lot of great ideas out there as to how you can go about, what programs you put in place, what events you schedule. But the right idea, obviously is a much different way to move forward. So I guess that would be my question is how do you differentiate?
That's a great question. I love that question. I think there's a few things, Kellen, that I think are important. And I've talked about this on a couple podcasts. So I'd say one of the things is to always make sure that I always call it traffic lights, where you kind of you predetermine 6 questions. Before we move forward with an idea or project or campaign, we ask 6 questions. Do we have the right leader? Do we have the right finances? Do we have the right this? Do we have the right that? I think when you're able to create this sort of, again, it's like a predetermined questions. So let's say you came up with 6 questions or 8 questions that you would ask yourself or your team anytime we're about to launch a project, a campaign, or whatever. These 8 questions we ask ourselves, and I call it traffic lights because it's red, yellow, green. So it's like I got to make sure most of these are green, maybe one's yellow, but I can't have 5 red. And I think that helps separate what we as entrepreneurial type people and go-getters, which is who you are. In the time I've met you, I can just tell you're a pretty aggressive leader, which is awesome. But our idea is like, we're going to go do this. We're going to go do this. And you have to sit back and look at a list and go, okay, but do you have the right leaders in place? Do you have the finances in place? Do you have those traffic lights, those questions that you have to predetermine? You don't make them up in the moment. You go back to your document every time and go, okay, we've got a document. We call it traffic lights. Most of these have to be green, or otherwise we can't move forward. And I think that helps to separate what is a kind of the good idea and the right idea, because what is a good idea in our head may not be the right idea. And as we asked ourselves quite a few questions, we might realize, that's just a good idea. I don't know if it's the right idea, because out of the 8 questions we would ask ourselves, 4 of them are red lights, not green lights, because we're not ready. And I think predetermining what the possibility is of you moving forward, I think is a great way to separate what is a good idea and what is the right idea. I think also wisdom. from a couple people. I'm a guy that I've always have ideas like you. It's like, I got an idea. What if we do this? What if we do this? And I think it's so important that you have both someone who is the gas pedal and someone who's the brake pedal on your team. Not the brake pedal as in negative, doesn't want to grow, but is going to, push back a little bit and be like, you think it's the right time? Are we sure? And being able to have those kind of people in your life. If you're surrounded by nothing but gas pedal people, then it usually ends up in a little bit of trouble because you don't have anybody asking the tough questions. So I would predetermine some questions that you are committed to and your team's committed to ask before you enter into any sort of direction to determine good or right idea. But then I would just make sure to have someone on your team that is the brake pedal. Again, not negative, not that they're downing everything, but they're asking the tough questions.
Yeah.
And I think those tough questions and those kind of that predetermined document, I think they create the right kind of conversations to start separating out. It's a really great idea, but it's not the right idea. And normally it's not the right idea. Now, the last thing I'll say about it is it's not the right idea that I've learned. It's not the right idea because the timing is wrong. It's not the right idea because we don't have the right leadership in place. It's not the right idea right now. It's not the right idea. It might be in a year from now because we don't have the finances, because we don't have the right leader in place. It's not the right timing. There's too much other things that will have to be sacrificed in order for our attention to go over here. I think you can start figuring out like, man, that's a really good idea. I don't know if it's the right idea for right now. And I think that's for me, that's the way I've personally approached it. And I'm not going to say it's always kept me free from trouble because normally I'm just like, let's do it, and then you end up in trouble. But I think it helps. So yeah.
Totally understand that. We have a little bit of that dynamic going on right now. My wife and I, we co-pastor. So she tends to be the gas pedal person. If it's an idea on the table, let's go, let's do it, let's launch it next Sunday. And I tend to be hang on, like let's talk it through, let's see. So we already have a little bit of that, but as I guess we start to get a little bit more, advanced and build further structure, we're going to want to build out that, it sounds like, to create that kind of spectrum of conversation. And I guess that kind of ties into one of the things, because like within our team, I feel like we can keep that dynamic for what's the best place to go. But I know, and I'm sure I'm not the only church that experiences where we have a lot of our congregants sometimes will have different ideas about, hey, what if we thought about doing this? Or, hey, what if we thought about doing that? Or, hey, I really wish we could offer this. And while, obviously we love to be accommodating and help as much as we could, it feels like there should be a balance between meeting the needs of your people and over catering to requests and suggestions for things. Is there a series of questions, or is there something that you would say you guys use to find out where that line is? Are we over catering to just people wanting things, or are we meeting the needs of our congregation?
Wow, another great question. So if I'm hearing you right, you're talking about there's people that maybe in the congregation could speak up and say, we need to start this ministry. We need to do this. And they've got this idea or this concept or ministry or whatever. And you're kind of like, okay, let's do that. And you might find yourself at times maybe catering a little bit to the whim or the idea or the concept of someone. And where do you find that balance? Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Yeah. Like, I don't ever want to discourage someone who feels like they, have a heart to start a certain ministry, but it just feels like I guess maybe along the same lines as the good idea, right idea. It just seems like we've had suggestions from people that are like, we should start this, Celebrate Recovery ministry. And I'm like, that's a wonderful idea. I don't know if it's the right time. Or, what if we got into this fine arts program or something like that? Okay, wonderful. I just don't know that that's the best use of our time and resources right now. And so it just seems like at some point there has to be this defining line of what is a request we should grant and what is something we should say it's just not in our purview, at least right now.
Yeah. Several things. One, I would say the traffic lights are really, really helpful because here's the thing about the traffic lights. If you predetermine them on a document, then when someone brings an idea up to you, you pull out the document and say, hey, we always run it through these questions before we even think about anything. So they're not just feeling like you're shooting it down. You just pull out a document and go, this is something now they feel like, oh, this is something that we, the church, we, the leadership, look at before. It's not just the pastor rattling off 3 or 4 questions that are because he's trying to shoot down my idea. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
The document actually saves you. It saves you from feeling like, or from people feeling like you're just shooting down their idea because you're just pulling out a document that is something that you all do, even you. So that, number one, could be a really great tool, bro. I mean, a really great tool to help you just keep people from thinking you're just shooting down ideas. The other thing is here's what happens in a church. If I were to draw a circle, and then I just drew out these little lines from the circle, kind of like sunshine. When you start a church, it's always about growing. You know, the little lines are going out, growing, developing, getting more people, getting critical mass, getting people. You know, you're trying to get critical mass. You're trying to get a church going. Then what happens unintentionally is that those little lines that come out from that circle, they start to curve back in. And what I mean by that is if I was drawing it on a whiteboard, I'd draw this and it would look like a big sun. And then you curve the circles and come back in because there's this natural gravitational pull that pulls us back in when it was all about reaching and growing. And now we're pulling back in to sustain what we have. And I think a lot of pastors, I'm not saying you're doing this now, but a lot of pastors make that mistake where it's like, okay, we're growing, we're developing, we got good people, we got a critical mass, we got a budget, we've got everything that's going on. And now, this person wants to start a ministry and I don't want to upset them. I'm not saying you're doing that, but people do that. This person wants to start this, they want to start that. I don't think it's the right time or whatever, but they're going to get upset. And so what we do is we start saying yes to them. So now remember that circle with the little lines drawn out. We go back in, and now what we're doing is the gravitational pull is back to the middle, like, okay, we got to protect what we have because we don't want to lose people. Where we were all about outreach before, and then after a while, it becomes this gravitational pull to not lose people. So I think that can be a challenge for people. I'm not saying that's for you, but that can be a challenge for people where it's like, they're related to a lot of people, and boy, if they get upset, and, you know, we better do something. And then, so I think that's one of the issues. The last thing I would say is, I think we have a tendency to maybe cater to people sometimes in fear and insecurity. We don't want to upset them or whatever it is. I think that could be part of why we do that. But another reason that we do is because we're not crystal clear on who we are. I always say, in absence of clarity, Kellen, people will arrive to their own conclusion. Mm-hmm. So the more clear you get, like, this is who we are, this is the way we're going, that currently doesn't fit into what we're doing, and that's not the direction we're going. I've noticed the clearer you get, the less people will bring up unclear ideas or ideas that don't match, idea that's not mission-driven. So the clearer you get, the less people will bring up ideas that are unclear isn't the right word, but that'll bring up ideas that are contradictive to the direction that you're going. Okay. Because they already know you're going in that direction. You know, if you and I sat at in Texas, Whataburger's a big thing, right? In Texas?
Yes.
You guys have the Whataburger. In Southern California, it's In-N-Out Burger, you know? We all fight who has the better hamburger. But let's just say you and I are sitting there and we own 3 or 4 Whataburgers. We own 3 or 4. We're sitting in a regional meeting and we're like, look, hey man, we're going to start serving sushi at our Whataburger. They're going to look at us like you're out of your mind because this is what we do. We don't do this. Well, sushi's good. You're right. It's good. It makes money. You're right. It makes money. A lot of people like it. Yep. A lot of people like it, but that's not who we are. Now bring that same concept to the church. It's like, no, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. Although it's a great idea, it can change lives. It can do all sorts of things, but it's not the direction that we're going. And that's why Paul said this one thing I do, not these 14 things I dabble in. But this is who we are. This is how we go. This is how we roll on Sunday. This is how we're going to grow. This is how we're going to develop. The clearer you get, the less sushi ideas will come your way, because people will know it's a great idea. You make a lot of money or whatever, or in the church world, hey, it's a great idea, could reach people, could help people, but it's not where we're going. So I'm not saying that you're not clear, but man, do I encourage people that are listening to this, get crystal clear. This is who we are. This is the direction we're going. We're not going that direction. We're going this direction. The clearer you get, the more people will most likely not bring up those type of ideas that they know is in a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's one of the struggles we had in our first couple of years is obviously, we launched the church and we're a new church, we're the community, we have some of our standard kind of direction points. But I felt like the first year or two was us kind of developing that culture, what separates us, what makes us unique. And so it seems like you're saying, the more clear we are and the more we're able to fill out that kind of foundation of who we are, it should knock off some of the, as you call them, the sushi ideas, which I'm stealing that analogy because I think that's such a great way to communicate that idea, is that sushi's a great idea. It's just not who we are, So to me, that kind of, I guess, would segue nicely into, for us, one of the challenges we've had is the area that we planted, that we felt called to, is an area, it's a smaller town. There's probably 25 to 30 churches in a 5-mile radius. It's very oversaturated with a lot of and for good or for bad, I'll say the word, very churchy. And so when we started to plant there, we even questioned, like, okay, God, why are we planting a church here in a community that clearly has enough churches to meet its needs? And some of the things we found in just listening to the Lord and doing some research was that there's a lot of churches to meet the check the box kind of church need, but there aren't meeting some of the more community-based needs, some of the kid-based needs, some of the spiritual needs. Mm-hmm. And so when we started, we kind of launched with this, hey, we're gonna be a little different than everybody else around here. We're gonna try and target some areas that have been dramatically underserved, and which has been really helpful. It's resonated with a lot of our people. But what we're trying to walk this line on is, how do we communicate our unique qualities and our differences, and how we're not like the other churches, but not do it in a way that disparages the other churches. And because obviously we want to work together with them, and we don't necessarily look at them in a negative light. But I guess maybe the question is about, how do you communicate our unique culture and who we are without disparaging other communities doing, following the Lord?
Oh, that's good. I'll give you another example. We went sushi route. Now let's go Apple route. So okay. When Apple created the iPhone, this is what they separated what was known as a brand target and a sales target. The brand target is, we are creating phones for creative thinkers. So we're developing phones for creative thinkers, innovators. That's what our phone is about. It's people that are creative innovators. Now, that's the brand, kind of like, we're innovative, we're creative, we're better than anybody else, we're different, whatever. That's the brand target. What's the sales target? Who are they selling it to? And someone would say, oh, they're selling to anybody that wants a phone. No, that's not necessarily true. They're selling it to people. This is what they say. We sell it to people who want to identify as a creative thinker and an innovator. Not people that are, but people that want to identify with that actually care about, like, being in on the know or in on the current. My dad's 86 years old. He has a flip phone. He doesn't care about anything about a phone or what it does or whether or not it can. Nothing. None of that matters to him. He doesn't want to download an app. He wants to make phone calls. So did they make the phone for him? No. So anybody that doesn't care about any of that, that's not the phone they made. Nope, that's not their audience. This is our audience. This is who our market share is. People from age, whatever, teenager all the way up to probably 55, like people that want to, whatever, 60, 70, I don't know, but people that want to identify with a creative thinker, but not the people that don't. The people that don't, they didn't target for them, and they're okay with that. Now, let's take that thought and let's move that over to the church. I think one of the greatest things that you can do right now is identify and wrestle with what's known as a USP, your ultimate strategic position. What makes you unique? Now, we know we're not competing, and we know that we're all trying to reach people, and we know that I get all that, and I'm completely for that. However, I think there is wisdom and godly insight that could make you like, okay, how do we be completely different than anyone else? What's the passion that you have? Here's the questions I would ask. What's the passion that you have? If I was working with you and your team right now, and we're going to whiteboard this, I'd say, what do you think the passion is of the pastors? What do you think what do you think that you guys can do better than anybody else? What do you think the community actually cares about? What is their concerns? What's the community's fears? What's the community's doubts? So you start to realize like, wow, this is what's going on in the community. This is their fear and doubt and concern. This is something we could be good at. This is something we're passionate about. And all of a sudden, those things start to blend together. In Arizona, there's a huge church in Arizona. I think it's, I don't even know, one of the largest churches in the nation. About, I don't know, 20 years ago or so, the pastor's like, we're just another church in Arizona. There's thousands of them. We have services on Sunday. We have, we're just whatever. And so, he read a statistic. You've probably read it. If the husband goes to church, 91% of the family will. But if the wife does, only 60% of the family or something. I can't remember the statistics. But clearly it was like, man, if the man goes to church, for whatever reason, the entire family goes. So he just said, well, what if we created a church that targeted men? So if you go to their church now, walk up there on a Sunday, you'll see plasma screens everywhere outside, and it all has ESPN going. If you go there tonight to their church, right behind their church is not an average, an extremely above average sports facility. Multiple football fields, baseball fields, softball fields, everything. And I'm not talking like, oh, it's kind of nice. Like, it looks like a nice little park. It's like, what in the world? It's like UCLA or something arrived, and built their sports complex.
Wow.
And when you pull up, this is what he said. We're going to be about two things. We're going to be about men and sports. People that identify with sports, people that want to live the adventure. We're going to be about men and sports. Now, it doesn't mean they don't have women's stuff. It doesn't mean that, and any of that. That's not what I'm saying. But what happened is they said, we're going to be about men and sports, and we're going to be better at it than anybody else. Well, bro, that took their church from whatever it was, 1,000 people to probably 30,000. It just went wham, because it was like so much that the little leagues and all the leagues, they're like, we're just going to do all our stuff at your place. We can't compete with what you guys have. They rule in that area. Yeah. So now take that and put it back over. Same thing with Apple. Like, we're not going to rule for the person that wants the flip phone. We're ruling in the area of those that want to identify with creative thinkers. Same thing with you. It's like, okay, you mentioned children. Okay. What if you thought, that's just an example. I think you need to think about this, but what if that became your USP, your ultimate strategic position? What if it was, all kids under the age 18? We're talking about all next gen. Like, we're not just kind of good at it on Sunday. Like, we do parenting classes, we do stuff for kids, we do music lessons, we are so about targeting the kids. Let's think on that for a moment if you were to target next gen. Okay, one, are people concerned about it in your community? Probably. Most likely, I think people are more concerned right now with everything that's going on in the world and all the, political and sexual identity and all that stuff. I think you have a lot of parents and grandparents that are really concerned about the next generation. Okay, that's one thing for sure. They're concerned about it. They're probably passionate about it. They're probably even afraid of what's going to happen to the kids as they grow up. Okay, if they're afraid of it, there's a fear in it, there's a passion for it, there's a concern for it. It's something you're passionate about. I can tell you a couple things. You go after that like nobody's business. When anybody has a teenager or a kid, what church are they going to choose? They're going to choose you. Let's think about parents and grandparents when you need to fund something. Are they willing to fund that? Yeah. they're willing to fund that. They'll probably fund that faster than almost anything you bring to their attention. Why? Because it's their fear, it's their concern, it's their kids and their grandkids. It meets not just those parents, it's the grandparents of these kids. You know, I have a 2.5-year-old granddaughter, bro. I'm thinking about her having to go to public schools in California with what they're teaching. I'm like, there's no way. I'm willing to do whatever check I have to do because I want to protect her. Yeah. So if it's a passion of yours, it's a passion in the community, it's a fear, it's a doubt, now all of a sudden that becomes that. Now, I'm not saying that's what it is for you, but I think you're on the right track and you're thinking like, what's your ultimate strategic position? What makes you so unique that it meets the city's need, that they think about it like the men in the sports, which is unreal. If you ever get a chance, go check it out. It's unbelievable. I mean, it is really incredible. I feel like I've seen a lot of churches in my life. I've never seen anything like this where I walk up, I'm like, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if you had something that people were like, oh, I mean, when you think, using the kid analogy, and I'm not saying that's what you're going to do, but wow, we have I've got an 8-year-old granddaughter, or I got a 12-year-old kid and a 14-year-old kid. Who am I thinking about when I think about church? I'm thinking about your church. There's no doubt. That's the church I want to go to, and that's the church I'm willing to write some checks to. That's the one I'm willing to fund because of how concerned I am about what's going on. So does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know, any follow-up questions you have on that? But again, I'm not saying, you mentioned kids, so I kind of went down that venue, but find something that makes you man.
That's what I was going to kind of repeat it back to you to make sure I was hearing you right. But it sounds like you're saying identify what it is that is our niche, so to speak, that is our thing that uniquely we're suited for, we're passionate about, meets the need, and find where all those things intersect and leverage that, I guess, to be our identifier. You know, if we're going to create a culture synonymous with something, find out what that is and then build around it. Would that be like a
doesn't mean you're not going to have 100%. It's not going to mean that you don't have Bible studies for this and stuff for women and whatever. You're going to have all that. But the thing that you're going to push unapologetically is, hey, our church, and what's your church's name again? I'm sorry.
A Relentless Church.
Your church's name?
Relentless Church.
Hey, man. Relentless, yeah. So, hey, man, we're going to, here at Relentless, let me just tell you, we are the premier place for families. If you've got a child or a grandchild, we are the premier place for them. We pull out all the stops. And it's not just, it's a nice children's program on Sunday morning. No. Dude, it's what we do Monday through Saturday. Because I always say it's what you do Monday through Saturday that makes Sunday happen. And what you do, like look at everything we do. There's nobody that dominates in the area that we dominate in. There is, and side note, there's a ton of grant money out there for those that start targeting teenagers, because I'm telling you, it is the heartbeat of people. So you might be onto something there. I think that's worth praying about, worth talking with your wife about, and some of the key leaders. Like, man, what makes us unique, and is God calling us to be better at this than anybody, and stronger, and is it our passion? Is it the passion of the city? Does it match? I mean, if he was doing men in sports, but he was doing it in a town where everybody was 80 or older, he probably not the right idea. Right. It's got to, you talked about intersecting. It's got to intersect the community, their passion, their concerns, their fears, your passion. Can you be really good at it? If that all intersects, it's like, man, we might have something here. So those are some of the things I think about. But hey, man, I got to jump. So sorry, I just checked on my phone here and realized time was running out. But man, dude, it is really awesome to have you. I hope it was beneficial for you today. I really do. And
absolutely, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything I can do for you, let me know, man. And again, thanks for being on today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.